The cruise liner, the SS Obsidian, was a colossal leviathan of luxury that cut through the black waters like a shadowy predator. On board, the atmosphere was festive, with laughter echoing from the sunlit decks. I joined the passengers, excited for a week of escapism on the high seas. The first night, however, the ship's opulence masked an unsettling undercurrent. As I strolled along the moonlit deck, I noticed a lone figure leaning against the railing, gazing into the abyss. A chill crawled up my spine as I caught sight of the person's face, pale, eyes hollow, a visage etched with a profound sadness. Curiosity drove me to strike up a conversation. The stranger introduced himself as Captain Thorn, the commander of the Obsidian. His voice carried the weight of 1,000 secrets, and his eyes held tales untold. He spoke cryptically of a curse that haunted the ship, a malevolence that surfaced when the moon hung high in the sky. As the nights unfurled, the ship transformed. The once lively corridors grew silent, the air heavy with an unseen presence. Whispers slithered through the walls, secrets from the ship's past clawing at the edges of perception. I glimpsed fleeting shadows, figures that vanished when I turned to face them. One evening, as the ship sailed into a thick fog, Captain Thorn sought my company. His demeanor had shifted, a mixture of urgency and fear etched on his face. He spoke of an ancient relic, a cursed artifact that, according to maritime law, had been responsible for the demise of countless vessels lost to the sea. The Obsidian, he claimed, was no exception. In a hidden chamber below deck, Thorn revealed the artifact, a twisted sculpture of obsidian, its eerie glow casting dancing shadows on the walls. The captain spoke of a spectral entity bound to the relic, a malevolent force that fed on the fear of the living. He implored me to help him break the curse before it consumed us all. Reluctantly, I agreed to aid Captain Thorn. We delved into the ship's labyrinthine bowels, following the cryptic trail of symbols etched into the steel walls. The whispers grew louder, an unintelligible chorus that seemed to mock our every step. Thorn, driven by an almost desperate determination, led the way. The heart of the ship revealed a chamber bathed in an otherworldly glow. The artifact, perched on a pedestal, seemed to pulse with a sinister energy. As Captain Thorn chanted incantations to sever the entity's connection, the ship shuddered, groaning as if resisting the intrusion into its dark secret. Suddenly, the air grew thick, and the shadows coalesced into a ghastly figure, the manifestation of the malevolent force. It spoke in a disembodied voice that echoed through the chamber, recounting tales of despair and shipwrecks, of lost souls forever bound to the cursed relic. Thorn continued the incantations, beads of sweat forming on his brow. But the entity fought back, unleashing a torrent of phantasmal horrors. Spectral hands reached out from the shadows, clawing at us with an icy grip. The walls echoed with the anguished wails of the damned. As the struggle intensified, the artifact's glow intensified, casting an ominous radiance that illuminated the captain's face. His eyes glowed with an unnatural fervor, and his voice took on an otherworldly cadence. The realization struck me. Thorn was not battling the entity. He was succumbing to it. In a desperate bid for survival, I seized a nearby fire axe and swung it at the artifact. The obsidian shattered, releasing a shockwave that reverberated through the ship. The entity wailed, its ethereal form dissipating like smoke. Captain Thorn collapsed, his eyes returning to their human state, filled with gratitude and remorse. The ship, once a haunted vessel, seemed to sigh in relief. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the whispers faded into a distant murmur. The fog outside dispersed, revealing a moonlit sea. The SS Obsidian sailed on, no longer burdened by the curse that had ensnared it. In the aftermath, Captain Thorn, humbled by the darkness that had nearly consumed him, thanked me for my intervention. He admitted that the lure of power within the artifact had tempted him, and had I not acted, he would have become a vessel for the malevolent force. As the days passed, the passengers regained their carefree demeanor, unaware of the supernatural ordeal that had unfolded in the ship's depths. Captain Thorne and I shared a silent understanding, the weight of the secrets binding us. On the final night of the cruise, I stood once more at the railing, gazing at the expanse of the open sea. The waters, once ominous, now sparkled with a serene beauty. The SS Obsidian sailed into the horizon, leaving behind the memories of a harrowing journey, a journey that had tested the boundaries between the living and the spectral realms.
The Infernal Serenity, a mammoth cruise ship, sailed through the obsidian waters like a colossal beast in the night. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow that danced on the waves. As the ship cut through the inky darkness, a mysterious hush settled over the decks, and the usual revelry gave way to an unsettling quiet. On the third night of the infernal voyage, an inexplicable force tugged at the corners of my curiosity, luring me to the lower decks where shadows clung like spectres in the dimly lit passageways. The air, thick with anticipation, whispered of secrets untold. Driven by an unseen compulsion, I navigated the labyrinthine corridors, each step echoing in the profound silence of the ship. A flickering light led me to an unmarked door, seemingly swallowed by the oppressive darkness. As it creaked open, a frigid breeze greeted me, carrying with it the scent of brine and an unsettling foreboding. The room within was a forgotten lounge, its grandeur now tarnished by neglect. An ancient grand piano stood at the centre, its ivory keys seemingly untouched by human hands for decades. Compelled by an otherworldly force, I approached the piano. Without volition, my fingers caressed the keys, and a haunting melody filled the desolate lounge. The music echoed through the silent corridors, a melancholic lament that resonated with the very soul of the ship. As the last notes lingered in the air, a spectral mist materialized, swirling around the grand piano. From the mist emerged ethereal figures, draped in tattered remnants of clothing from a bygone era. The room transformed into a spectral ballroom, the ghostly figures locked in a mournful dance that transcended the boundaries of time. The ghostly assembly moved with a grace that betrayed the agony etched in their transparent faces. Their hollow eyes fixed upon me, and the air pulsated with an otherworldly energy. In the spectral waltz, I glimpsed fragments of their untold stories, due tragedy, that had befallen this forsaken ship. As the ghostly dance unfolded, the room became a window into the infernal history of the Infernal Serenity. The figures embodied the victims of a maritime disaster, their spectral movements revealing a tale of betrayal, lost love, and a watery grave that claimed their souls. The grand piano, once an instrument of joy, had become a conduit for their eternal sorrow. Haunted by the revelations, I delved into the ship's archives. The Infernal Serenity bore a sinister past-due tale of treachery, mutiny, and a sinking that condemned both the living and the dead to a perpetual nautical purgatory. The abandoned lounge had been a witness to the ship's infernal plunge into the abyss, and the spectral figures were the lingering echoes of that fateful night. Determined to understand the ship's cursed legacy, I sought the guidance of the ship's crew. Their eyes, burdened with the weight of untold secrets, hinted at a shared knowledge of the spectral occurrences. A seasoned seafarer among them, an old salt with eyes that spoke of a haunted past, reluctantly divulged the tale of the Infernal Serenity's cursed voyage. The ship, it seemed, had been caught in the clutches of a malevolent sea spirit vengeful entity seeking retribution for the sins committed aboard the ill-fated vessel. The cursed souls, unable to find rest, perpetually reenacted their tragic demise through the spectral waltz in the forsaken lounge. Empowered by this newfound knowledge, I resolved to break the infernal curse that shackled the Infernal Serenity. Armed with an ancient artifact, a talisman said to have the power to commune with the supernatural, I returned to the haunted lounge. As the haunting melody emanated from the grand piano, the ghostly figures assembled for their infernal waltz. This time, however, the talisman glowed with an otherworldly radiance. With each note, I recited an incantation, invoking the power of the talisman to sever the spectral bonds that bound the cursed souls to their perpetual dance. A brilliant light enveloped the room, and the ghostly figures convulsed as if caught in a spectral tempest. The infernal melody twisted into dissonant notes, echoing the torment of the vengeful sea spirit. The ship groaned and shuddered, as if wrestling with the supernatural forces that sought to break its cursed hold. In the midst of the spectral upheaval, a voice echoed Dune, anguished lament that pierced the veil between the living and the dead. The vengeful sea spirit manifested, a ghastly entity with hollow eyes fixated on me. The talisman pulsated with an otherworldly energy, pushing back against the infernal force. As the battle between the supernatural forces raged, the spectral figures writhed in agony. The infernal sea spirit unleashed a cacophony of haunting cries, its form flickering like a phantom in the tempest. The grand piano, once a vessel for sorrow, now stood as a sentinel in the spectral maelstrom. With a final incantation, the talisman released a burst of radiant energy. The infernal sea spirit let out a mournful wail, dissipating into the ether. The room fell silent, and the ghostly figures vanished like shadows swallowed by the night. The infernal serenity sailed through calm waters, the curse that had held it captive lifted. The abandoned lounge, now free from the spectres of the past, held an air of tranquility. The grand piano stood silent, its keys untouched by spectral fingers. As dawn painted the horizon, the old seafarer approached me, his eyes now clear of the haunted fog that had shrouded them. With a nod of gratitude, he acknowledged the role I had played in breaking the infernal curse. The infernal serenity sailed into the dawn, a vessel reborn from the shadows of its haunted history. Passengers awoke to a serene sunrise, blissfully unaware of the infernal encounter that had unfolded beneath the surface. The once haunted lounge, now a dormant chamber, held the echoes of a spectral performance, due tale of curses broken and lost souls, finding solace in the depths of the open sea.
I woke to the eerie creaking of metal and the distant sound of waves slapping against the hull. Disoriented, I sat up in the narrow bunk, my surroundings unfamiliar and dimly lit. The cold air bit into my skin, sending shivers down my spine. Panic set in as I realized I was alone in a cramphead, windowless cabin on what appeared to be a deserted cruise ship. How did I get here? My mind raced, searching for answers in the foggy recesses of my memory. The last thing I could recall was a hazy blur of laughter and clinking glasses in a shorefront bar. I strained to remember more, but my thoughts were a fragmented mosaic of confusion. Throwing aside the thin blanket, I stumbled onto the cold metal floor. The ship seemed to groan and sway beneath me, its movements unsettlingly unpredictable. I fumbled for the doorknob, and with a creak the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. The ship was silent, devoid of the usual hum of activity. My footsteps echoed through the narrow hallways, amplifying the profound emptiness surrounding me. It was as if the vessel itself held its breath, waiting for something unseen. As I explored the deserted passageways, a chilling realization set in. The ship was adrift in an endless expanse of darkness. The moon cast feeble glimmers on the turbulent sea outside, emphasizing the vast emptiness that stretched to the horizon. Panic clawed at my throat as I shouted, but my voice disappeared into the abyss. Desperation led me to the ship's upper decks, where an ominous fog shrouded everything in an ethereal haze. The only discernible feature was the foreboding silhouette of the ship's wheelhouse. Guided by a macabre curiosity, I ascended the metal stairs. The wheelhouse was deserted, the ship steering itself through the blackened void. An unnerving stillness permeated the air. Desperation turned to dread as I peered through the fogged windows, hoping to glimpse a sign of life, but the only reflection was my own bewildered face. Time blurred as I wandered the labyrinth of the ship. Empty dining halls echoed with the ghostly laughter of absent passengers, and vacant lounges whispered of forgotten celebrations. The ship, once a vessel of leisure, had become a haunted husk drifting into the abyss. As the hours stretched into an eternity, my sanity began to fray. Shadows seemed to dance in the corners of my vision, and the ship itself whispered haunting secrets. Whispers of a maritime legend, a ship condemned to sail the endless seas, collecting lost souls who awakened in its ghostly embrace. The ship became my prison, a steel cocoon drifting through the void. Sleep eluded me, and when I did manage to close my eyes, nightmares of drowning in the abyss plagued my restless slumber. Each day blended into the next, marked only by the rhythmic pulse of the ship's unholy voyage. In the midst of my delirium, I stumbled upon a door that seemed different from the others. Its surface was adorned with strange symbols, etched in patterns that sent a shiver down my spine. Against my better judgment, I turned the handle, revealing a pitch-black room. The darkness within was absolute, a void that seemed to devour the feeble glow of the corridor lights. Hesitating at the threshold, I felt an invisible force pulling me forward. As I stepped into the abyss, the door slammed shut behind me, leaving me engulfed in impenetrable darkness. A spectral glow emanated from the center of the room, an ethereal pool that pulsed with an otherworldly luminescence. The symbols on the door seemed to writhe and pulse in tandem with the glow. My heart pounded in my chest as an ancient voice echoed in the void, whispering tales of the ship's cursed history. In the pool's luminous depths, apparitions materialized, shadowy figures suspended between the realms of the living and the dead. They reached out with ghostly hands, their eyes hollow sockets of eternal sorrow. The haunting whispers intensified, recounting stories of passengers who, like me, had found themselves trapped in this maritime purgatory. I recoiled, my mind unraveling in the face of the spectral revelation. The ship was a vessel of the forsaken, a realm between worlds where lost souls were condemned to an eternal voyage. The symbols etched on the door had marked me, binding my fate to the accursed ship. With a guttural roar, the apparitions surged forward, their icy touch penetrating my very soul. The pool of light engulfed me, and I felt the weight of countless tales echoing through the ethereal currents. The ship itself seemed to groan in agony as it absorbed another lost soul into its timeless voyage. In that moment, I became one with the maritime legend, a specter adrift in the abyss, my wails merging with the haunting whispers that echoed through the desolate corridors of the cursed vessel. The Arctic Majesty sailed on, an eternal mausoleum of lost souls condemned to a perpetual nightmare in the heart of the boundless icy abyss.